Good day. We're here on page Tzadik Hey in the Sefer Maneh Chacham. And Reb Yoel Kahn, who wrote this letter, although his name was not on it at the time, and it's written in third form. It's a student, a bacher in the yeshiva in 770, who drove him around, and he was asked by the different Satmar and others, about the Shita of Chabad. How does it coincide with the Alter Rebbe's Shita? They saw the Rebbe's, the previous Rebbe, the Rebbe in particular's outreach as a departure from the Alter Rebbe's model of Moich Shalat Alev, referring to Moichin, mind over Midos within yourself. And they saw the idea of Yefutza Ma'anesecha Chutza, that the Baal Shem Tov was told by Mashiach when he had a vision, and he went into the chambers of the Mashiach. He asked him, Master, Ma, when will you come? And he told him, Yefutzu Ma'anesecha Chutza, when your wellspring will spread forth. And the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the Rebbe in particular, took that to mean to go to the streets with Ma'anesecha, the well springs. Ma'anesecha is not just Nigla the Torah, but Chassidus. So the Alter Rebbe started it in the late 1700s, and he had opposition from the Lechevitcher and from the Karliner and from others. And with Yutas Kislev, it was established that his derech is a derech in Hashem, and it's accepted, and the Eibishter wants it. That was okay, fine. So for kind of 175 years or so, Chabad Hasidus had the backing of other Hasidic groups, more or less. Okay, I'm going to say more or less, but. When the Rebbe took it to a whole different level, to go out to the streets. That's something that even Lubavitch didn't do in Russia, So the Rebbe said, of course, because it wasn't the time, the call of the hour. On the contrary, in Russia, you would get killed for that. But we come to a free country in America that's post-Holocaust, and the Jews are falling aside, and we need a revival. So the Rebbe said, this he sees as a way, a revival. In addition to Torah learning and mitzvahs and everything else, of course, but reaching out. And Baruch Hashem, he did it, and other organizations joined and did the same. And we have, Baruch Hashem, entire great-grandchildren today of Baal Teshuvos who became, during those years, and Baruch Hashem, the Yiddish community has grown and doubled, tripled. The Satmar, or the Torah Karta of those who, whatever, without those that, still believe in a Shita, that outreach is not within line of the Alter Rebbe. In other words, they are also, they come from the Balatanya. I don't know if you know that, but Rabbi Yoel Teitelbaum was right? So they claim we're the real inheritors of the Balatanya, and you Lubavitchers, your derech is made up. You decided. Yes. Yoni.
I didn't understand what you just said about Rabbi Yoel Teitelbaum.
Rabbi Yoel Teitelbaum, his family way back were relatives, come from the Balatanya on one side.
Huh?
I think a great-great-grandfather, grandmother married into the Schneerson family. That's what I mean. They married into the Schneerson family. Just like Rabbi Aaron Karliner, I think also one of his, and Reb Nachman's daughter. So one of the children, what? Granddaughter, thank you. Granddaughter married a grandson of the Alter Rebbe by second marriage, but they were married. I wrote about it in my book on Breslov. So, in other words, there was always, intermarriage between the Rebbeische families. That's a known thing, not just the Chabad, Chernobyl, Twersky's, Tolnev, that's a known thing. But until the Rebbe everyone wore Shtreimel. So everyone was comfortable. In other words, what you do in your house, in heart of hearts, how you sit and what minute you do in shul or in your house, who cares? You understand? But when you go to the streets and you put on a bent down hat and you're a Rebbe and you go to college and you don't wear Shtreimel, that's a public statement. And why you go like that? It's a no. What? That's a no. So this, without even a philosophical issue, right away rubbed the Hasidic world the wrong way. It just said, like, if you're a Chassid, and if you're a Rebbe, a Chasidic Rebbe, where's your Shtreimel? 1 second. If you're a Chasidic Rebbe, you don't go to college. So right away you got 2 strikes against you. And this Lubavitcher Rebbe went to college, he didn't go to like Rabbi Soloveitchik who got a PhD. The Rebbe went to get a engineering degree, so he went to courses to be able to get into the engineering school. But again, you think the people on the street know that? They don't know that and they don't care. He went to college. He didn't go to college. Rabbi Soloveitchik went to college. Yes, he went to University of Berlin, signed up for a mathematics course and another course, because if he didn't have those things, the engineering school, and we have the name of it, I forget the name now, wouldn't accept you. So he needed those courses to get in. And so too with the Sorbonne. Sorbonne, when he went there, he wasn't a college student per se, and his records show that. He was away sometimes for a few months at a time because the Frierdiker Rebbe needed him either in Riga or in Paris, wherever he was. So, and for years, I'm talking about for years. So, when we have the letters, we have the timing. It's all open, But who studies that? Who knows about it? The people outside of Chabad don't know it, and even many Chabadics don't know. But outside of Chabad, for sure, they don't know. So therefore, the issue that struck everyone. And they knew that the previous Rebbe was this big tzaddik with a spudik, and he went through the Russians, the Nazis, and everything, and he survived, and he was a ill man confined to a wheelchair. You came in, you saw everyone that came in to see him from any kind of Judaism background said he's a malach. He looked like a malach. I heard this from Satmar Chassidim that saw him in the 1940s. I heard it from several of them. They said he was mamish, like awesome. The Satmar Rebbe went to see him. The Baba Rav went to see him. He was a very big tzaddik, and his appearance lent itself to that image that the Hasidic world had of a tzaddik. Then comes along the Lubavitcher our Rebbe, and he's a younger man. He has no Shtreimel, and he went to university. He went to university to some capacity. Oh, and you're a Rebbe, and not only are you a Rebbe, you're all of a sudden opening your mouth, and you're gathering people around you, and you're going to the streets. They said that's a departure from what they called old Chabad. And what they created was an old Chabad versus a new Chabad. And this is maybe for another time, even Barry Garari, the previous Rebbe's grandson, in his manifesto, he writes this point, that his uncle was the Rebbe. He says, my uncle's Chabad is the new Chabad. And we don't identify with that, So even within Chabad, there were individuals as close as the grandson of the previous Rebbe. And of course, he doesn't have credibility because of what he did, and he didn't have a beard, and many more things which I'm not going to say in public. So he's discredited. But nevertheless, that was the mindset. What's real Chabad? Old Chabad. The Rebbe's Chabad, it's all, New Age, okay? We talk about New Age, Hillel, hey, New Mexico, the mountaintop New Age. This is New Age stuff. It's New Age Hasidism. So in other words, they didn't need Zalman Schachter to start New Age Hasidism. They said the Lubavitcher Rebbe started already New Age Hasidism. You understand? So what Rabbi Yoel is really dealing with, I'm giving you a background, and I'm taking a little time to explain it. You should have the background. What Rabbi Yoel is really dealing with is much greater than just a few Satmars on a Torah Kartanix throwing stones or shouting Shaygitz, Shabbos, Shaygitz, and all that stuff. We're dealing here, in other words, what I'm saying is, even by those, and there's thousands and hundreds of thousands of non-throwing stone Shabbos and violent, vigilant type of individuals, you would say normal individuals, the question, what the Rebbe brought to the Hasidic world was an innovation as far as they're concerned. And, one second, Yoni, going back to the classical teaching of the Chassam Sofer, called Chodesh Osir Min HaTorah, right? The new Tvua, right? You're not allowed to have, right? So too, the Chassam Sofer said that anything that's innovative, he was referring to the reformers of his time, is Osir Min HaTorah. And that slogan is embedded in Hungarian Hasidism at its core. Chodesh Osir Min HaTorah. We keep things the way it was in Europe, and that was the whole Shita, by the way, of the Satmar Rav. The Satmar Rav Shita was this Chodesh Osir Min HaTorah, so he specifically walked in the streets in the 1940s and 50s with his entire regalia. My mother-in-law, may she be well, remembers encountering him in the streets, I guess, of Williamsburg, either in the 40s or 50s, very early on, and had a gabbai walking behind, and the gabbai told her, get out of the way, and he's walking with him. You're talking about 1949, 50, 51, 52, Williamsburg, Brooklyn. No one else had beards and kaftans and Shtreimel. That wasn't the case. We can't imagine it because we have it all over today, but it wasn't the case. You look like a weirdo. And he's walking, and he has a gabbai behind him, and he motions to my mother-in-law, who was, a from Beis Yaakov girl, and get out of the way. She had no idea. So he, in a way, so what was his idea? I'm going to teach the street that we could live like we lived in Budapest, in Hungary, in Europe, the old way, and we're going to keep that tradition. And that was so this shita with nuances by these Hasidim new square, right? So the square Rebbe, Rabbi Yaakov Yosef, Zechron Tzaddik Levracha, he says, I'm going to open they call it a shtetl, a village in upstate, in Rockland County, right? New Square. What was his idea? It's too chaotic here, and it's not sneeze. We're going to run away somewhere, and he creates an entire shtetl, which is wonderful. But the idea was to be insular and not to be to the point where they have signs, and I've been there. Men should walk on one side, and women on the other side. Not that they always keep it, but I'm just telling you that. So whether it's Kiryas Yoel, whether it's the New Square, and others wannabes, they just didn't have a chance to make it, or it didn't work for them, to create these enclaves. I'll give everyone a chance in a moment. To create these enclaves to separate yourself. So therefore, because of all this and separation going through Europe, where the Goyim, many of them, they were so anti-Semitic, they wanted to kill us. The only thing we do is hide and run away, and that's what we did for so long. So the mentality continues in America. It continues, and therefore comes the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he says, no. He says, go to the streets. What do you mean go to the streets? These people hate us. That's what they say. They don't hate us. They want to kill us. Be suspicious. And I'll tell you the truth. Even though I grew up in a Lubavitcher home, but in the community, I could hear it. Everyone's goyim. It's like this. My father, is a Romanian Jew. He would sing sometimes a tune it's like, and he taught it to my children, and they were embarrassed to sing it to me. They said, "Ta, it's so racist." And he didn't even mean, it's what he grew up with, all goyim abed, and, we suffered so much, in Europe, that it was in our DNA that goyim want to kill us. Every goy wants to kill us. So all of this comes into to America post-Holocaust, comes and 5 years after the previous Rebbe passes on, the Rebbe takes over, and all of a sudden he works with the youth, and he says go out to the streets, and he starts getting women involved. Women are supposed to be in the kitchen. Women are supposed to be locked up. Women are supposed to be not seen or heard. So you have to put yourself into that situation during those years to understand what he did, and how for them it was outrageous. It was outrageous, and noch dazu, and you call yourself a Rebbe? This Rabbi Yoel is addressing all of this that I just said through all of these things. So when we studied it, I don't want people to get the idea this is only about Satmar and Natura Kartamix. No, it's about them in particular, how to address their tainus, their arguments, and also the overall shita of Chassidus Bichlal, and I think later on he will address some of that. Okay, we have first Isser, I think you want to say something, then Yoini, then Hillel. Go ahead. and Moshe. Everyone gets a chance. Go ahead. Yes, Isser.
This is a great discussion.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the name of the book, but I read a book years ago that was written, mamash, as a critique of Lubavitch, but everything that they presented as a critique, I saw as a mila. And they used the term post-Haredi Judaism, meaning, just as you said, they used to wear Shtreimel and now they don't. They used to wear long coats and now they don't. Now they're going out in the street. They're using technology to spread Yiddishkeit.
Yep.
Whoever heard of this? And they were presenting it as a critique, that the Rebbe in the drive to send out shluchim made sure that the Talmidim know shchita, and they know safras, and they know kashrus, and they know, so to get smicha, but in the old days, it used to be the intellectual Hasidus that would just study Gemara, and now they're putting out all of these Amei Haaretz who only know how to paskin shilas in far out communities.
Uh-huh.
That was a kind of, but I love that term post-Haredi.
Yeah. I never heard that post Haredi. Thank you.
That's a new PC.
PC, post Haredi. By the way, if you come across the name of that book, let me know. Okay, Isser? Okay, Yoni, you're on.
So one thing is you were discussing about how the Rebbe was more New Age, but my question is, wasn't it the whole thing with the outreach and Tzivus Hashem and doing the kiruv and branching out? Wasn't that the Frierdiker Rebbe's ideas?
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
He came from the old country and he had the Shtreimel and everything, but he set up the Rebbe to really to go.
Yes.
Kind of like he handed him the football.
Yes.
He basically gave him the football.
Yes. But that's true what you said. But simultaneously, the Rebbe took it to another level. He just took it to another level. The Frierdiker Rebbe, was not a well man. It was so early on. It was during the first 5 years, from 40 to 45, we had a Holocaust. And he was dealing with that. So he had really 5, and then in 45, he has another, I think, stroke. He became more ill. So, and also, who were his people? It was the Rebbe, Rebbe Nissim Mendel, Rebbe Chadikov. It was those 3-4 people, secretaries and helpers in the office that took his things and publicized them. But the answer is yes. But let's say, for example, let's say the women's organization, the Chabad, right? Now, the Rebbe started in the Chabad in America in 1955 or 56, I believe, okay? And that was a first, an organized, in America, an organized women's organization on a grandiose level. The truth is that in 1934 or 5, 10 years 20 years earlier, the previous Rebbe told three Chasidim, I think Rabbi Gordon's Zayda, Rabbi Yochanan Gordon was one of them, Rabbi Kazanovsky, and Rabbi Chaskin, I think three Chasidim, to make what was called Achos HaTmimim, the sister of the Tmimim. A student studying in a Lubavitch yeshiva is called a Tamim, because the name of the yeshiva is Tomchei Tmimim. So the Rebbe said, Achos HaTmimim, sisters of the Tmimim. And not that there was no Lubavitch girls' schools. Talking about in Europe. But they came from Lubavitcher families, and the Rebbe wanted that they should stay Chabad, so he wanted to created somehow, they should feel good, just like Sarah Schneer did with Beis Yaakov, the Rebbe did with Achos Tmimim. It was so small, right? 30, 40 girls, there's a picture of it actually, it's interesting to see the picture. But from nothing, that didn't come over to America. So I'm saying, and then the Frierdiker Rebbe didn't really make a push of it, He did start, the Frierdiker Rebbe is the one who started the Beis Rivka school, right? Which started actually in Borough Park. And then he had branches in Williamsburg and in Brownsville and here, there, small, here, there. But it pales in comparison to how the Rebbe and his people took it to another level. So the answer is yes. And by the way, what you said was argued, and it's written in a book called Chabad, H-B-A-D, by my professor Avram Fuchs-Brunner, who's passed on. Maybe one day, if you'll ask me, I'll tell you about him. He was a very interesting man. I spoke to him once. He lived in Silver Spring, Hillel. Towards the end of his life. He was a genius, I'm sure, very bright. I think he had a PhD from Harvard. He studied by Rabbi, the Tolner, the Soloveitchik Tolner. Forget his name now.
Tursky.
Rabbi Tursky, yeah.
Tursky.
Yes, Professor Rabbi Tursky. So he was a very bright guy. So he writes in his book, Chabad, and that's why I called him, he writes that the Frierdiker Rebbe started the outreach, and that was a deviation from the Alter Rebbe. And he was like a chassid of the Rebbe, but he said, in this issue, he says, I take issue. And it's not the Rebbe, he says it's the previous Rebbe. They both went on a course. In this area, it's a deviance from the Alter Rebbe. I picked up the phone right away to call him and had a long discussion with him. We didn't change each other's opinions, but, I did discuss it with him, on an intellectual level, So the point is that what you said is the case. Okay? Just wanted to give you a background. Now, Hillel, to you.
Mine are just questions. You mentioned New Square and Kiryas Yoel, and I was curious which community came first and whether those communities get along with each other. Satmar and Square.
I think New Square came first. I think. Now, in other words, I think the opening of New Square was before Kiryas Yoel, but it could be the concept was first by the Satmar. But this can be found out easily. What else did you want to ask?
I just want to ask, do they get along? Do those communities, are they friendly to each other, Square and Satmar?
You know how it is.
I don't.
There's friendly and there's friendly. In other words, I think didn't no, that's Vishnitz. The Square. He married the Vishnitz's daughter. Look, Rabbi Yaakov Yosef Tversky, the Square Rebbe here in America. He was a very, very peace-loving individual. The Satmar Rav, Rabbi Yoelish, was a fighter, very, a kanoi, really, his personality, he was very smart, very street smart. I'm saying Rabbi Yaakov Yosef was a quiet, Chasidic Yid, a Chasidic Rebbe, just like, leave me alone, I'm not into politics, you know what I'm saying? So you're talking about two different people. So if anything, if the Satmar wanted something, he would be nudging him and the Bavaver, and this went on for years. He and his people at Tainus and other Hasidic sects. Why didn't he come out, with backing him in his various campaigns over the years? Because he wanted them to be as militant as he is. You know what I'm saying? And they didn't want no.
Okay.
And they said, and that's why I think I told you. That's why I believe the Baba Rav Shlema Halberstam. He made a choice when he left Crown Heights. He didn't move to Williamsburg. He moved to Borough Park, and Borough Park that time was not a Hasidic place. But he knew he doesn't want to be around Satmar Rav and Lubavitch, and Crown Heights became a war zone, so he didn't want to be there. So he's not, but he could have easily moved a few blocks down. He said, no. I'm telling you, I didn't see this and I didn't hear it, but I think it's clear as the sun. He wanted to get away from the Satmar, militancy. And he moved to Borough Park, and he did very well. So both Rabbi Yaakov Yosef Skver, by moving out there, and Balav moving there, they really separate themselves from Williamsburg, and you see that the Klosenberg Rebbe, you could see Halberstam of Klosenberg, the big tzaddik, he was in Williamsburg and he suffered. You know that they threw eggs and fire engines. They made his life miserable. And he was the Satmar. Oh, don't ask. And he was the Satmar Rav's uncle. I mean, you understand? Williamsburg was at that time owned by Satmar. And you had to concede to whatever they want. Otherwise, they were militants. And they don't care if you're this Rebbe, that Rebbe. So, finally, the Kloisenberger started a division out in Union City, New Jersey. And one in Eretz Yisrael. I think that was also to get away from this nonsense, Not that he wasn't scared, but, it's like it becomes cuckoo. Moshe, you wanted to say something? Or?
Yeah, I just wanted to continuing on what you were mentioning about militancy. I'm just curious, where do other, and I guess there's probably no clear answer to this, but other Hasidus like Bayan, Babov, Bells, we would maybe naturally consider as a little more, moderate.
Well, Bell suffered greatly from Satmar. I mean,
so for example, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think once a year, I don't know if it's Motzi Simchas Torah or I don't know what it is. The Belzer Rebbe, he's been giving some sort of address.
Right during Simchas Torah, I understand. Yeah.
Or maybe, and I've heard in the past he's been, said some things that would be considered a little bit radical for not just his for Hasidic communities in general. So I'm just kind of curious where I guess one of my questions is what is other Hasidic groups like the ones I mentioned? How do they look at, let's say, Satmar?
None of the other Hasidic groups are militants. Recently, Ger became very militant, and it's very, very upsetting. But Bells was never, his radical statements. For example, everyone should get a job, a half-a-day work. I think if that's called radical, we better check something out. You know what I'm saying? But the approach of Satmar is, it's aggression. It's it's pushy. It's forceful. Most of the other Ger now is doing that within themselves. They're not going to others. Satmar expected Kloisenberg and others. You live in Williamsburg. You follow our line. And let's say when Skver, beat that guy and burnt his house because he made his own minion, that was also aggression, but that was in Skver. I'm talking about 20 years ago. But overall, You mentioned Bayan. They're all, everyone moved away from Satmar. They moved away. They just didn't want to deal with it, so they moved away. I don't know how it's in Eretz Yisrael, but in America it's that way. Isser, you wanted to say something, and then we'll finish.
I just wanted to share with you, because of your interest in history.
Yeah.
A little known, probably unknown part of Boston history. Reb Moshe from New York, who at one time lived across the street from Lubavitcher Rebbe in Crown Heights,
Yeah.
was offered the position of Nesias of the Aguda, which the Rebbitzin turned down on his behalf. She would not allow him to do that, but he was part of the Moetzes.
Right.
And he was trying to develop an insular community similar to what developed in Kiryas Yol and Square, not for Boston, but for all of the people within the Aguda umbrella, so that it would include all the groups that aligned themselves with Aguda, but they could not come together to make it happen. Just a piece of history that you might find interesting.
What Isser? What year was that? Do you remember? Do you know?
I don't know.
And is it written anywhere?
No.
Oh.
Unless it's in the Aguda archives, which I don't have access to.
I'm going to contact the Aguda archivist. I know him because this is a very important. It's a very important piece of history.
Oral history that I heard from older Bostoners.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yes, Moshe.
I'm sorry. Just so on my internet, you cut out. Who are you speaking about?
Reb Moshe.
Reb Moshe Horowitz, the Boston Rebbe.
Yeah.
So, as in Reb Moshe would remind me, that was Reb Levi Yitzchak's father?
Brother.
No.
Older brother.
Brother.
Yeah.
Brother.
He took over the Chassidus in New York.
Kevra, I have to go. We'll see everyone tomorrow. We didn't learn inside, but I think it was very important to have this background and discussion. Zionism. Thank you.
Yeah.
Moshe,